Hello. Welcome. Hello. Anybody having issues with the live stream? I didn't hear. So, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Retire Ready session. So, we thank you so much for making the time to be here this evening. This will be an hour well spent, we believe. So, thank you very much for making the time. My name is Michael Millen. I'm one of the wealth managers with Arnoff and Romo. And before I introduce our speaker this evening, just a couple of housekeeping things to mention. You know, the women's restrooms here on the left, the men's in the right. Emergency exits both sides. Hopefully we won't need those, but they're pretty accessible, right? The booklets and things that you have, the pens, the notepads, those are yours to keep, and please take them with you. Would mention this is an hour, and then at the end you can ask questions throughout. But at the end, there'll also be an opportunity to have more questions. You can ask Justin. But it's a lot of information, so please feel free. Please do, in fact, take notes because it's going to go quickly. It's a lot of information. Your time is precious, so we pack in a lot of information. So please do take notes. I believe that is almost it. One thing I might mention, we will have slides here on the screen, some presentations. There's a number we'll get those to you after the session. But if you're in the back and have a hard time seeing, feel free to move a little bit closer. And you can do that now, no shame. People did it yesterday so they could see the presentation a little bit better. Okay, with that in mind, I'd like to introduce Justin Romo. He is the co-owner of Arnoff and Romo Tax Preparation and Wealth Management. Justin.
Thanks, Mike. So, thanks for coming. I would like to just encourage you to participate. And I'm going to try and incentivize you to do that by offering you free coffee. So, for questions, just do me a favor and raise your hand if you want to answer one of the questions. And I can get you an overpriced latte on the house. All right? Cool with that? Cool with that? All right. First question. Anyone know what type of car this is? Car buffs in the room? Anybody? Coffee's on the line. Ford. Do we have a decade? Any decade guesses? 50 coffee right here. There you are. Amen. Let's do it. 55. 1955 Ford Fairlane. Do you know what is interesting about the year 1955? Is the year that Ford came out with a seatbelt. But it wasn't standard. In fact, it was an option that was going to cost you 17 bucks. So the sales guy had to sell this thing. And so his sales pitch might have sounded something like this. Hey, we got this great new thing. It's called a seatbelt. If you put it on, yeah, exactly. You reduce the chance of you dying in a car accident by 70%. Guess how many people opted into the seatbelt in 1955? Coffee. Close enough. 2%. 2%. What does this illustrate, and why are we talking about this at all? This illustrates that change is hard. Folks that had been doing something a certain way didn't feel the need to change. And retirement can be a little bit the same way with our finances. We'll learn that retirement can be sort of a different beast, and we're going to explain exactly why. So tonight we're going to aim to get a seatbelt on some of these concepts so that you can enjoy retirement. For those of us approaching that age, we want to navigate it safely because it's a beautiful time of life. We want to enjoy it. We don't want to worry excessively. That would just take the joy out of it. A little bit about the Retirement Wealth Academy. So this is an academy founded by fiduciary financial professionals. We're going to talk about that word in just a moment. Basically, it was created to educate folks in retirement or coming up to retirement so they can make better choices. We believe that educating personal investors may entail them to a more comfortable future through smarter choices. Just a few housekeeping item disclosures. This presentation is not affiliated with or endorsed by the Social Security Administration or any other government agency. All examples are for illustrative use only. It's just education tonight. What are the goals for tonight? So tonight we want to understand what retirement means to you today. The answer is going to be different for everyone. We want to learn about what could derail your retirement. There's a formula about how long your money needs to last. We'll talk about that. How to generate income to last your lifetime. And finally, how to gain access to this Retire Ready strategy session that we will talk about at the end. So about myself, this is the awkward part of the conversation. So I am an enrolled agent. So I am a federally licensed tax expert that can represent U.S. taxpayers before the tax court, the U.S. tax court, the same rights before the IRS to practice as CPAs and tax attorneys. I'm a fiduciary investment advisor representative, also licensed by the California Insurance Board of Professionals. We have a tax practice and wealth management practice, Retirement and Wealth Academy instructor, but most importantly, husband and proud girl dad. I have 3 daughters. So for those of you in the room that have a bunch of daughters, you know how wonderful it is. I do lose a lot of arguments in my house, but I wouldn't trade it. So in this class, here's the lay of the land. We're going to talk about like an introduction to retirement first, which actually is very important. It kind of explains why this whole advice industry exists, the risks, the formula, how to invest in retirement. And as a tax guy too, this is one of my favorite sections. So stick around till the end. Strategies to know: Roth, QCD, step-ups, 1031, DSTs, and HSAs. All strategies that we could use in retirement effectively, pay less tax. Everyone's interested kind of in that. And then estate planning, the ultimate gift to your heirs. We're going to talk about the biggest tax mistake we see every year on tax returns and how to avoid it. So that's it. 6 things. We hope you find it valuable. So let's dig in. We're going to talk about a few terms first so that we can kind of breeze through the rest of the presentation without like having to define a bunch of stuff. So, fiduciary, legally obligated to act in their client's best interest. So if you pay someone for their advice, you would hope that they are giving you advice that would benefit you. It's kind of a no-brainer. But it's not always a no-brainer when there's kickbacks involved. Like if I get a commission for selling you Apple stock, what do you think I'm going to recommend? Apple stock, exactly. So in their capacity as a fiduciary, a fiduciary investment advisor typically won't receive a kickback from anything they sell you because it just de-incentivizes them to act in your best interest. So that's what a fiduciary means. We have to act in your best interest or else we'll lose our license. A typical fee structure when working with someone like this, they might charge you like 0.5% up to 1.5% of the assets that you have a fiduciary manage. Okay, so it's a common fee structure you'll see in the industry. Marginal versus effective tax rate. Just for my own edification, does anyone know what tax bracket they're in based on their last tax return? No one's reading their tax return? Too high. Exactly. So what you probably are thinking about is your marginal tax rate. That's the tax rate that your highest dollar is taxed at. But the tax system is progressive. That means the first $24,000 is actually no tax at all. 24 to the next threshold, 10%, then 12%. And then if you make enough money to cross into the 22%, only the dollars that are above the 12% tax threshold get taxed at that top rate. When you average all of those marginal rates together, you get an effective tax rate. Okay, so that's the difference. We'll talk about why that matters in a little bit, but that's the difference. Marginal is just the top. Traditional versus Roth. Just again, show of hands. Who knows the difference between traditional and Roth? Traditional IRA, traditional 401k? Okay. Anyone have a traditional IRA or 401k at work? A few of us. Okay. So when you contribute money to your 401k or IRA at work, these are retirement accounts, you get a tax break. You get a deduction for putting that money in, and it's at your marginal tax rate, which brings down your effective tax rate too. But the point is, the difference between these two, the way I like to think about it, is when you get the benefit. Traditional, you get it at the beginning. Roth, you get it at the end. So a Roth retirement account will grow for you tax-free forever, but you don't get any benefit. Like if you have a $10,000 tax bill, you owe the IRS $10,000 on April 15th. You're like, hey, I put $6,000 in a Roth. It's still $10,000. So you get no benefit at the beginning, but then it grows. That's $6,000. If you put 6, 7, 8,000 every year and it grows to $1 million, you can take it all out in retirement and pay no tax on it. Okay? It's the difference between traditional and Roth. Questions? Cool. So an introduction to retirement. This is very interesting. In the past, there was not such a need for us to be so interested in retirement because it was more typical for a person to work for the same company for their whole life and get a pension and Social Security. Maybe you have a CD and we'll call it a day. Like, there's not a ton of planning that goes on because a pension is just money that your old company was paying you for the rest of your life, no matter how long you lived. But something very interesting happened in 1978. Section 401k was added to the IRC, to the Internal Revenue Code. So those numbers and letters sound familiar, right? 401k. So basically what happened is the employers said, okay, you know what? Instead of us figuring out how to pay you for as long as you live, you do it. So you figure out how much to save, how to manage it, how to make it last. It's your job now. So now this whole entire industry has arisen because retirement has changed. Now it's our job. So the landscape has changed. People are living longer. That's another issue, is why why the employers didn't want to pay anymore, because people were living too long. People are retiring sooner. Healthcare costs are at all-time highs. Pensions are largely a thing of the past. And there's a lot of baby boomers turning 65. 10,000 per day right now. And we'll do for another 5 years or so. So that's a lot of folks that need to manage a lot of money and to do it wisely and tax efficiently. So how do we do that? 3 aspects. We need to income and tax plan. We got to talk about pensions, rentals, savings, investments, Social Security, healthcare planning, and legacy planning. It's all part of an effective and efficient retirement plan. So what are some of the things that can derail a retirement plan? We're going to talk about 6. Number 1 is longevity. This is a beautiful thing. People are living longer, have better access to healthcare, but it can be problematic when it comes to a retirement plan, right? Because, well, our money's got to last longer. The purpose of this section is to get us to think about how long we might live. So, another latte on the line. At age 65, a married couple, at least one spouse has a 50% chance of living to what age? Any guesses? Right here? No, sorry, but you can have some coffee anyway. Which one? C? 90? No, but... Good question. It says at least one spouse. So we're going to be gender neutral for the moment. Right, but what are the chances that at least one of you, so let's assume the female, 92. There you go. 92, good job. Okay, so like you said, we have different probabilities for a man versus a woman. So we can play a fun little game here. You can find your gender and civil status on the left and find the probability that you will live to a certain age. So a single woman sitting here that is 65 tonight has a 72% chance of living 20 more years. So it's a very high probability. So we need to talk about 20 or 30 years without a paycheck. How are we going to make that happen? Don't retire. Wow, yeah, that's actually a good point. That's actually one of our work longer. That's just the reality that we're facing today, especially in California. This is brutal. We're going to talk about inflation later, but yeah, we'll get there. We'll get there. So when you talk about living longer, you only have a few options. You can make more money, spend less money, or a third option, get more from your investments. Let's talk about that in a little bit. Risk number 2 is the U.S. national debt. Why is that a risk to our retirement? Okay, here we go. Let me find my coffee. When was the last time the federal government had a surplus? There you go. Did you say 2001? Okay, good job. I think that's right. Yeah, 2001. Wait, bonus points for who in administration in 2001? Did you say Bush? Yeah, good job. Good job. So, it's been a long time. And I'm not a statistician, but this chart is giving us a little trend. The national debt is a lot. 40 trillion. And, since 2008, you just see this sharp increase. So if you're wondering what the government is spending all this money on, again, this is an apolitical presentation. This is not meant to be, say, one side or the other. But these are just numbers. So federal spending is at 7 trillion. Federal revenues, estimated revenues, are at 5.2 trillion. So right off the bat, $1.8 trillion in the hole. On the left, our chart shows us the federal budget, mandatory versus discretionary. So you can see 3/4 of the chart is mandatory: Medicare, Social Security, Medicaid. The pie chart on the right just breaks out that red part into its own pie chart, and you can see nearly half of that is defense. So cutting the budget would just be 1% of 1%. So is that going to move the needle on the national debt? No, it's not. So just like before, it's like, what options do we have? We can increase revenue, which means increases, anyone? Yeah. So, or budget cuts. So if you think tax rates are high, who thinks tax rates are high? Yeah, it feels like they are, right? Especially here in California. Historically low. Historically low. The median over the past 100 years is the 54%. Now, this is the top marginal tax bracket. So not like every penny that you make, they're going to take 54% or 54 cents out of every dollar, but just that top tax bracket. So right now, the top tax bracket is 37%, but you see, it can go higher. So our goal is not to predict future tax rates, of course, but it is to be prepared, regardless of what Congress does, which we can do, and that is part of why we're here, to plan. Risk number 3 is Social Security. This report came out just a few months ago, so it's hot off the press still. In 2026, the annual report from the Social Security Board of Trustees, managed the trust fund, predicted that they would be out of cash reserves by 2032. That's 6 years away. And not to say that like Social Security won't be around, but they're estimated to only pay 78% of benefits after that point. The Congressional Budget Office puts that number a little lower at 75%. So if you receive $2,000 or plan to receive $2,000 a month, that's going to be lower, potentially. And just for our own edification, just so that we know, we're here to learn a little bit, the trust fund gets revenues by 3 different sources. Interest, for a little while longer, on the excess cash. Payroll taxes and taxes on the current beneficiaries. So if you're receiving Social Security already and you make more than $44,000 a year, which is based on something called the provisional income formula, which we'll talk about later, you pay tax on the benefits that goes into the fund. But 90% of Social Security comes from this one, payroll taxes. What was the ratio of Social Security, what was the ratio of workers to Social Security beneficiaries in 1945? Any guesses? Right here? A. Do you have 2 coffees now? You don't drink coffee? She's got some coffee to give away after. Okay. Oh, you drink 1, but you're going to, okay. Okay, one more question. What is it now? Any guesses? This is actually not on the screen. What did you say? 2 to 1. 2.7, but let's round down. So you can see why it's running out of money. And it's been running out of money for a long time, and now it's 6 years away, and there's still no change to policy. So what's the answer? Well, if there's any lawmakers in the room, maybe we can petition them, but I'm not one. So, but like with most things that we've already talked about, you only have a few options. You can more taxes, lower benefit, or raise the age. Maybe we'll just say, in fact, I just saw this. This isn't law yet, but it's been proposed that the top 20% of Social Security earners will get a cap on their COLA or stop receiving cost of living adjustments. So every year, most Social Security or I should say most years, Social Security receives a little bump. They get a little pay raise, 2% or something for a cost of living adjustment. One of the proposals to help Social Security out is to say, hey, for the folks that are in the top 20% of earners, Social Security earners, no more raises for you. So, yeah. This is just being proposed. Yeah, exactly. What is your full retirement age? It depends on what year you were born. And the reason we care about what our full retirement age is, according to Congress, is it depends on when we will get our Social Security, or when we can start. So we can start claiming it at 62. 67 if you were born 1960 or later. So then you would be at 67 would be your full retirement age. If you start taking at 62, which is the first year you're allowed to, you will probably get 70 to 80% of your full benefit. So go on SSA.gov and put in your Social Security number. They're going to tell you based on a formula which averages your top 35 years of earnings. It's a complicated way that they derive your Social Security monthly amount. But if you wait until 70, you get the 8% per year more every year you delay it past 67. Once you lock it in and start taking it, that's the amount you get. You may or may not receive COLA adjustments. Yes?
I've heard that before. We've been there for 2 different outcomes. So one person I thought said you would get 8% for every year.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say you deferred for 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
You would increase your money by 24%.
Mm-hmm.
And another one said, no, it's not like that. It's going to be 8%.
So your question is, if you delay it after 67, is it 8% per year?
Right.
Yes.
So it could go up if I delayed for 3 years. It could go up 24% more.
Yes. And that is very important because, and I'm going to illustrate that here, this is a Social Security case study. So when you decide to claim your Social Security matters because getting it wrong is a mistake that with a lot of zeros at the end of it. Let's take Jim and Pam. Jim and Pam, we're going to put their dates of birth at 58 and 1965. We're going to assume, based on probability, that they're going to live to 85 and 90. So Jim till 85 and Pam to 90. And this is the hard part of planning, right? We have to put a number on this in order to make a decision, which we don't know, but it behooves us to plan, and we could use probability to do it. Here we have a chart with some shaded boxes. The darker the box, the higher the cumulative lifetime benefit. So what do we mean? If you take the thinking out of Social Security claiming, you just say, you know what? Hey, let's just both wait until we're 67. That way we get our full benefit. Let's claim 67. You claim 67. I'll claim 67. And we'll call it a day. Based on those facts that we talked about earlier, their cumulative lifetime benefit would be $1.8 million given Jim's 85 and Pam's 90 years of life. If they used a software to calculate their maximum potential earning, they would have seen that the actual better scenario is for Jim to claim at 70 and Pam to claim at 65, and you can see the difference was $200,000 over the course of their life. So it's good to think about. $200,000, there's not a lot of decisions that, have that many zeros at the end of them. So it might be a good thing to get a Social Security analysis done if you're deciding to, if and when to claim. Beware to those working before their full retirement age. So if you claim Social Security before 67, but you want to keep working to supplement your income, The IRS is going to, oh, not the IRS actually, the Social Security is going to withhold $1 of benefit for every $2 earned over $24,000. Again, this is not taxable. This is not how much Social Security is taxable. You're never going to see it. They're just going to withhold the benefit. So let's say, for example, you claim at 62, but you still need to work to supplement your income, and you make $34,000 at a part-time job. That's $10,000 more than you're allowed to make. So they're going to withhold $5,000 per year of your Social Security benefit. Now, it's not gone forever. They're going to give it back to you in pieces over the course of the rest of your life. But, I mean, that's probably something you were counting on, so you should know about this rule. The taxability of your Social Security is different. So there is something out there called the Provisional Income Formula. The Provisional Income Formula states that you must take half of your Social Security benefit. So let's say you make $2,000 a month on Social Security. So that's 24 grand. So take half of that, that's 12 grand. And then add your other income. And then what does that equal? If you're married and that's less than $32,000, your Social Security will not be taxed. If it's between 32 and 44 grand, roughly, it's 50%. And if it's above 44,000, 85% taxable. So just to run a few numbers, because it's hard to live on $44,000 in California. So if there's 44 grand or more on your tax return and you're taking Social Security, 85% of that benefit will get thrown in and taxed at your marginal tax bracket, at that highest one. Any questions on that one? All right, the depressing subjects are almost over. Yeah.
It's not the tax bracket of the husband and wife, their income, so it's a bad tax bracket, it's actually taxed higher.
No. That is the highest one. So the husband and wife, their income gets combined.
Right.
And
So they're in like the 24%.
So you add that Social Security on top, 24. So 85% of the funds will go into the pot and get taxed at 24%, which will bring up the effective tax rate. Now we're going to move on to healthcare. So healthcare, the Medicare system is around. It's in trouble too, but it gets less press. Not parts B and D because they're funded by premiums and they keep raising the premiums. But at any rate, it's only estimated to cover 60% of medical costs in retirement. That leaves most folks paying $7,600 per year in medical costs. So we have different facets of Medicare that do different things. Part A provides basic hospitalization coverage. Now, this slide could be its own seminar in itself. Tonight, we're not going to get too much into it. We just recommend that it be part of your retirement plan and that you talk to an expert to figure out how much insurance you want or need. One thing that it doesn't cover is long-term care. According to Genworth, they did this study in 2024, talked about how much it costs for folks that need different types of care. For example, assisted living facility, $70,000 per year. If you want a private room, 127 grand per year. This is going to be devastating. Even if you have a nest egg and you can afford it, I mean, this is just going to decimate it rather quickly. If we add inflation to these numbers, which we're going to get more into inflation in just a moment, by the time 2040 rolls around, it'll be about $300,000 a year. There are programs out there, Medi-Cal, Medicaid, that will kick in and pay for the cost of care. So what we can do is strategically position our assets in a way so that we don't have to spend down our entire life savings before the government programs will kick in. So there's a couple of strategies out there. It's just for you to know, just to be aware. Again, every situation is going to be a little bit different, but long-term care insurance is an option. It's expensive, and there are downfalls to it. For example, if 6 months is the time that you need long-term care, you can pay the premiums for a long time, and some of them have like a 3-month waiting period. So after 3 months, you start getting the benefit. Average stay is 6 months. Like for 3 months, we're going to pay these astronomical premiums. Again, this is not, every situation is different. But there's also asset protection trusts, so that you can put your assets in a trust, and then Medicaid won't factor those assets in when determining when to step in and pay for care. So that's an option. There's downfalls, of course. There's a look-back period. That means you can't just do it the day before you need long-term care and then be like, hey, I don't have any money. I need the government to come pay for it. So it's like a look-back period. So if it's 3 or 5 years since you've put the assets in this trust, they're going to say, hey, you got to spend all your own money first. Then we'll step in, right? So you got to plan early. There's different life insurance options here. So a lot of times we'll have, typical life insurance is like a death benefit, right? You buy insurance so that when you die, your loved ones will get this benefit, this death benefit amount. We can design the life insurance policy to trigger when 2 out of the 6 activities of daily living are not able to be performed. So that's eating, bathing, dressing, continence, transferring, and toileting. So if you have a specifically designed life insurance policy to trigger when that happens, they kind of front you the death benefit to pay for these things. And then the death benefit amount that your beneficiaries receives goes down, but you can access the funds in order to pay for the care. Medicare PSAs. Part P and Part D premiums, don't sign up late for Medicare Part B and Part D. They will penalize you every month for the rest of your life. Seems kind of severe, but that's the rule. So this happens sometimes when you're covered through work. You're working into your 60s and 70s, and you miss the cutoff to sign up for Part B and Part D. So if you're turning 65 or soon to turn 65, look into signing up for Medicare, even if you're not on Social Security yet, okay? Now, there are such a thing as an IRMA cliff. An IRMA cliff is an income-related Medicare adjustment amount. So, when you are on Social Security and you have Medicare insurance, premiums typically are deducted from your benefit amount. Premiums for Part D and Part D if you have the drug plan. In 2026, if you make more than $274,000 a year, if you make less than $274,000 a year, your premium is $284,000. $284. If you make $274,001, $1 more, 100 pennies, your premium goes up to $405. Times that by 2 if you're married, and times that by 12, thousands of dollars, because you made $1 or more. That's worse than yeah, go ahead.
Well, so if my husband's still working, so we're on his health insurance.
Mm-hmm.
Turn 65 and signed up for Medicare.
Mm-hmm.
A.
Uh-huh.
Doesn't mean to sign up for the
Okay.
When do they do that then?
You will have to, it depends. It depends. See me after class. So B and D premiums are the only ones subject to this IRMA cliff. So for Part A, there is no premium, but so it just, the reason I bring this up is because when we are in retirement, we are taking from our nest egg. So if we have like, let's say like a nest egg of like 500 grand from working from a company for 401k for a long time, and then we need money in retirement to live on, so we take money from that 401k. So if we're close to a cliff and we're between taking it, let's say between 45 and 50,000, and 50,000 would put us over the cliff, like we just need to know that so that we can plan for it. Risk number 5, inflation. This is the silent killer. The stock market crashes get a ton of press. And from working with clients all day, every day for many years, so many, and rightly so, are just terrified of the stock market. To put their life, their nest egg that they worked so hard for into like the stock of a company that has a board of directors that we don't know and can make any type of decision. But this one, I would argue, is more dangerous. Over the next 30 years, it's going to turn $100,000 of your nest egg into $40,000, regardless of what the stock market does. In fact, the Federal Reserve Bank has a mandate from the US government to keep inflation at 2%, not at 0. It is not their goal to not have inflation. It is their goal to have inflation. So this is absolutely going to be a part of our retirement plan. When we are planning for retirement, let's say we're 10 years away, like Tom and Michelle here. Let's say they spend $50,000 a month, but they're like, you know what? We're going to cut back in retirement. Not everyone does or can, but they say they're going to spend $4,000 in retirement. When we plan for inflation, 10 years out, that $4,000 turns into $5,300. So even though they say they're going to live on less, they have to plan to spend more anyway because of inflation. Does that make sense? This is the question we need to answer. Will our investments grow enough to keep up with inflation? Because after you're on that fixed income, you know, it's not going to keep up. So the nest egg has to. So now let's talk about the stock market. Sequence of returns risk. I've got a question for you. Let's say you have $100 in Apple stock. Apple stock goes down 10% and then up 10%. How much money do you have in Apple stock? I'll give you a hint. It's I like your shirt. I do. We've illustrated sequence of returns risk because when you have $100 and you lose 10%, that's $10. Now you have $90 and you have a 10% bump off of 90. There you go. So the sequence of the returns matter. So this is a busy slide here, but I'm just going to explain what's going on. On the left-hand side, we have a $1 million portfolio averaging 6% annual return, and it's going to give us $4.2 million. So, number one, that illustrates it's nice to have $1 million and a 6% average return for, a couple years. We're going to end our life with $4.2 million. The portfolio B is the exact same starting amount and the exact same ending amount, but the sequence of returns is reversed. So portfolio A has a bunch of good years at the beginning. Portfolio B has a bunch of down years at the beginning. At the end of the day, with no distributions, it doesn't matter. We're at the exact same number at the end of the year. Now we're going to introduce a retiree that's taking money at $50,000 to live because they've built this nest egg of $1 million. They need 50 grand of it each year to keep their lifestyle. Portfolio A, no problem. When the stock market was good at the beginning of their retirement, when they started to take their 50 grand a year, they ended with $2.5 million. Remember, same exact starting point, same exact ending point. Portfolio B not only ends at 0, but at 83, they ran out of money. So the sequence of returns, basically, it's very important to get the first few years right of retirement. An ill-timed market crash can be devastating when we're taking from the nest egg when the nest egg gets decimated by a market crash. So what can we do? We need to have a plan. The plan is 4 steps. We need to take inventory. This is the easy part. You just count up your stuff, count your bills, and see. Take inventory. Step number 2 is identify your goals. This is the harder part. We need to start asking ourselves harder questions. What's important to me? What can I do without? What do I want for sure? Step number 3 is the fun part. We get to take your situation and your numbers and see and create a plan and execute it so that it works for you. And number 4 is you have to monitor and adjust as necessary because you change, your needs change, the laws change, and so we have to just make adjustments as we go. Okay, so now let's figure out how long our personal nest egg will last. There it is. You're welcome. So I didn't like algebra either, but that is the formula. So let's just, instead of breaking that down, which is going to take too long, let's just take an example. So assuming a 3% rate of return, let's use the $5,000. Let's say we spend $5,000 a month, and our nest egg is 600 grand. At $5,000, 600 grand, 3% rate of return, our money's going to last 12 years. So, again, will your investments, what effect does changing the rate of return have on how long your money will last? Let's take Gary and Pat. Again, that $600,000 portfolio. They need 36 grand per year. Their rate of return is 4.5%. But remember, inflation is going to eat up the first 3. So after inflation, 1.5%, their money will last 19 years. They're 55. They have a 25% chance of living to 90 years old. So let's give them a better rate of return. Let's give them a 4.5% return. Now their money's lasting 30 years. So by 3% increase in rate of return, they added 11 years to their nest egg. It is very important to get a good rate of return. So it's like we've identified the risks, we've seen the formula of how long the money lasts, so we need to make it last longer. So how do we invest in retirement? First, we're going to talk about what not to do. There's a lot of misinformation online. We look at the stock market, the wars, oil, tariffs, the housing market. Like you could just get lost in reading about what's next doomsday is there going to be. And I'm not saying we shouldn't pay attention to the news. In fact, we pay attention very closely to what the market does every day. But and this is another big one, previous investment experiences. Who was affected here by the 2008 crash? Anybody? That was in my family, we got hit really hard. Really hard. There's still like scars. If you had invested at the height of the market before the crash in the S&P 500, where do you suppose you'd be today? 5 to 6x, 5 to 6 times your investment. So it's like those years were brutal. But if you had 500K in the S&P 500, you have 3 million by now. So it's like you can't just say like, stock market's not for me. You can, but then you're going to be battling inflation. So just be careful. that volatility is why the average investor doesn't do very well over time. This is a 20-year annualized returns by asset class. The average investor does 3.6%, S&P 9.5%. Again, we want consistency. These two lines here, this one that's going crazy up and down and this red one, have the same average annual return. We want consistency. It's more important than ever that we get consistency in retirement. How do we do that? There are ways, there are tools that you can use to keep a nice rate of return, but take out all the wobbliness that we no longer want in retirement. Here's a tip. We want our rate of return higher than the standard deviation. Standard deviation is a measurement that is sometimes called the wobble factor. So if an average annual return, let's say, is 10%, and the standard deviation is 13%, you have, on any given year, it's very likely that you're going to be between -3 and 23, because that's 10% plus or minus 13. What we want to do is get that standard deviation down, but keep that rate of return as high as we can. We're going to show you what kind of difference that can make on a portfolio. Let's take Mr. and Mrs. Smith. This is a real example. They wanted to live a worry-free retirement, travel, volunteer, and spend time with their 3 grandchildren. They needed $80,000 a year after tax, and they had $1 million nest egg. When they came to us, they had a 6.85 average return. Not bad. But their standard deviation was 13%. When we ran a Monte Carlo simulation, which is basically, it simulates 1,000 different iterations of the stock market on your portfolio. So it's just like, what happens if this happens? What happens if that happens? We do that 1,000 times. And when we ran that scenario, 59% of the time, their $1 million lasted their lifetime, which is a large percent of Monte Carlo simulations that didn't end well for them. $1 million, they wanted to live on 80 grand. What we did is we took their portfolio and lowered the standard deviation to 6%. Kept the average return at 6.18, which, we're always taught that in order to get more return, you have to take on more risk, which is, it's not untrue, but it's not all the way true. There are ways that we can keep it the same or roughly the same, but massively reduce the risk by over half. When we did that, their Monte Carlo simulation came back at 90%. Okay, so that is really rewarding in our line of work. You take someone that 59% will keep them up at night. 90% is much better. And in this particular case, we added a private pension, which is an insurance product. It's an annuity product with guaranteed income. That, in their case, it raised the probability even higher to 96%. So it's just something that you want to plan for and use the tools available to decrease your standard deviation while keeping your your rate of return as high as possible. Strategies to know. I'm just going to check my time here. Okay, this is my favorite part. Roth conversions. Roth conversions are important because, well, many reasons. But reason number one is that when you convert or put money into a Roth, you now are in full control, because that money has already been taxed. So it's going to grow. Again, right, we're going to invest and get the greatest possible return with the lowest standard deviation. And when that money grows over time, you will never pay tax on it. That perhaps will make your Social Security not taxable. That will keep you in a lower tax bracket. So there's a host of benefits. One strategy is, but let's say you were taught to put money into your 401k, so now you have all this money that is in a tax deferred bucket. It's never been taxed yet, but it will be when you bring it out. And then you do your tax return, and that top marginal bracket is halfway full. So you could say, you know what, I got this money in my 401k. I'm already paying 22%. I might as well just fill up the rest of that bucket. Maybe it's another 20 grand or so. You're paying 22% anyway, just convert it. But don't convert it all. We don't want to pay 37%. But, we're already halfway there. So just continue to convert until we reach that bucket. And some people say, you know what? Give me the 24% bucket too. It's 2% more. But I want to stop there because it's not worth 1/3 of my income to convert. You're going to have to plan, though. You're going to have to talk to your CPA or your tax guy and make sure that you're doing this, right. Another benefit that this has is something called the widow tax. This is not an actual tax, but it's just something that happens. So now that we are responsible for managing our own money since 1978, we are saving sometimes together with a spouse. And so we've got this nest egg, and both of our 401ks are IRAs. But then let's say one of the spouse dies. Those buckets get cut in half because if you file single after your spouse dies, your buckets get smaller. They get cut in half. So the same income those buckets fill up quicker because they're half as big. And then so in half the time, you find yourself in the 12% and 22 and 24 and 32. So whereas before you were at the 22, married, same exact income, your spouse dies, now you're paying 32. The widow tax. If you convert into Roth, you're not affected by that because money in a Roth that you pull out is not taxed. So even if you're at a double the tax bracket, or double the income, I should say, your tax on the Roth money is 0. Yeah.
Am I hearing that a Roth then is the better approach than a 401k?
The better approach, I would just say it is a planning mechanism that we should consider. Because, let me just give you one more example. Let's say you're in the later earning years of your life and making good money. If you're in a 37% tax bracket and 11% for California, that's 48%. If you contribute to your 401k when you're in a 48% combined tax bracket, you're getting $5,000 back for every $10,000 you contribute to 401k. So at that point, traditional sounds pretty good. It's hard to beat that. You get $5,000 back. Of course, these numbers are just pulled out of the air. But if you're in a lower tax bracket, and maybe too, if you're self-employed and you're having a down year, man, convert this stuff because you can convert it at 0, 10, or 12%, and you can really kind of take control of that money and get it growing tax-free. Does that answer your question at all, kinda? Is it better? Roth is the best way to go long term. I'll say that. Yeah. Great question. The question was, when I say convert, do I mean taking it out of a 401k and putting it into a Roth? Yes. Yeah, because putting money into a Roth is something that we can all do every year. if you have enough earned income to qualify and we're not disqualified by making too much money and having a retirement plan at work. It's a bunch of complicated rules, but basically we can all contribute if we have earned income to a Roth every year. The conversion stuff is if we have an IRA or a 401k that's never been taxed out in the universe somewhere with our name on it. Then we can convert it over here into a Roth. Does that answer? Okay. Bingo. Exactly. So our question was, convert it when you have a lower tax bracket. And two, I mean, it's a good thing that we just should consider, even if you're like in the middle of the road. If you've got a long way to go before you're retired, the rule of 62. Has anyone heard the rule of 62? If you take your rate of return and divide it by 62, that is the amount of years it will take for your investments to double. 72, thank you. It's a rule of 72. So if you are getting a 7.2% rate of return, you can double your investments 2 or 3 times during your retirement. All of that growth will be tax-free when you pull it out if it's in a Roth. Required minimum distributions. So these start at age 73. When you have a pre-tax retirement account, IRA, SEP, simple, 401k, 403b, 457, at 73, the IRS is going to start making you take distributions. This can be detrimental to your plan because now they are telling you when and how much to take out of your retirement plan. Whereas if we're doing conversions, we decide, hey, this is my low income year, this is how much I want to convert. And then once you're in a Roth, RMDs are no longer a thing. We don't have to worry about them because they've already been taxed. But RMDs are something we have to plan for. So just for example, if you've got a $400,000 IRA and you turn 73, you're going to have to start liquidating it 15 grand the first year and then more every year after that. It's just based on the IRS tables. Just another public service announcement. If you've missed an RMD, you're going to want to see a tax guy ASAP. The penalties are steep, but there is some recourse to get out of some of those penalties. So 73 RMDs. QCD, if you are philanthropically inclined, you may want to take note of a qualified charitable distribution. It is 7 o'clock, guys, so I apologize if anyone does have to run. Feel free. But QCD is when you take your pre-tax money, again, that 401k. You can't do it from a 401k, but if you roll your 401k to an IRA and you're 70 and a half, you can donate to your charity without it ever affecting your tax return. So you take the money straight from the IRA and send it straight to the charity of your choice. If you're in the 24% tax bracket, that saves you $1,200 because if you took it out and touched it first, and then sent it to the charity, you owe $1,200 in taxes. If you send it straight to the charity, you cut out the middleman, which is yourself, you save $1,200. But you can only do that. Oh yeah, go ahead.
Is that the same when converting from a traditional to the Roth? When you take it out and then create the Roth, it costs you more than if you just...
No, it's a little bit different. Okay. Yeah, so it doesn't matter. Once you take it out of the Roth, out of the traditional and convert it into the Roth, that's going on your tax return.
Okay.
Yeah. Whereas this stays off your tax return. I mean, it hits it, but then we exclude it. Yeah. So, step-up basis. This one, from an estate planning perspective, is the biggest One of the biggest mistakes we see, and it just hurts my heart. It's just painful when I see this, because by the time we see it, there's nothing we can do about it. Does anyone know what a stepped up basis is or when it happens? Good. Real estate is when we see it the most. It does happen on other assets, but a stepped up basis is what happens when you receive an inheritance. When you receive an inheritance, or in a community property state, when one spouse dies, the other spouse, if they're community property owners on the house, gets a stepped up basis. I'm going to explain why that's important. But where we see it the most is when there's one spouse left, one spouse is already gone, and then the remaining spouse isn't doing good. I've seen this multiple times. It's like the mom isn't doing good, the writing is on the wall, and they say, you know what, I'm just going to put the house in your name, daughter. They take one of their kids and they just put the house in their name. What has happened is a gift has taken place. They've gifted them half of the ownership in the house. And in tax law, when you receive a gift, you inherit the donor's basis. So let's say you bought a house for $100,000 and that house is just ballooned in equity. Let's say it's worth $1.1 million now. In the scenario where the child was gifted the mom's basis, she has a $100,000 basis in that property. If mom's gone and she goes to sell the house, the capital gain calculation is the sales price less your basis. There's a $1 million tax bill gain, capital gains tax, 15, 20%. There's no such thing as capital gain in California. It's all ordinary income, which doesn't receive preferred rates. So let's say another 9% on top of that. You're looking at 25 or 30% of $1 million. Hundreds of thousands of dollars in taxes that just could have been avoided. These are some specialized strategies. HSAs can double as retirement accounts. If you have highly appreciated company stock, you can take advantage of net unrealized appreciation. If you have your own business, you can set up your own pension plan, also called a cash balance plan. And for rental properties, a 1031 exchange. I do have some clients that they have a rental properties. They like real estate. And sometimes they're like, well, I want to sell it, but I don't want to pay a ton of capital gains. So they can use a qualified intermediary to sell the rental property. And again, you can't touch it. Same with the QCDs. If you touch it, it's broken. But if it goes straight from the escrow to the qualified intermediary, and then to purchase the new property, it defers the tax. And I even have some clients say, you know what? I want to sell the property, but I don't want to pay the tax, but I'm done with tenants. I want to get out of the rental game. They can 1031 it to a DST, which is a Delaware statutory trust. This type of investment owns real estate, but you just own part of the investment through the DST. And so you can sell your property, get rid of the tenants, invest it in the DST, pay no tax, keep your investment in real estate. And if you have a bunch of rentals, you can look into the real estate professional status, which combined with a cost segregation analysis can save you a lot of money in taxes.
What was DST?
Delaware Statutory Trust. Yeah. Go ahead. Yes. It's just like you owning shares of Apple stock. You just own the DST. The rep status and the cost segregation analysis are looked at closely by the IRS, so there's rules and stuff to qualify for that, so just be careful of that one. On estate planning, this is our last topic here. This is the ultimate gift to our heirs. What's the difference between a will and a trust? A will is a document that says, this is what I want you to do with my stuff when I'm gone. The problem with a will is a one-way ticket to probate. Probate is when a judge decides if your will is valid. Here's the drawbacks to probate. 9 months to 2 years, everything is public record. Anyone can just go and see what's in your will. It's not uncommon to be 5 to 10% of the gross value of the estate in fees, and anyone can contest your will without an attorney. So let's avoid that. And how do we do that? We can do it with a trust. Now, a trust is more expensive to set up. It just is. It can be $2,000 or $3,000 depending on how complicated it is. But it can avoid probate. And so it's like, yeah, it's a couple grand maybe, but if you have some assets that you're leaving to a future generation, worth its weight in gold. A trust is like a box. You put all of the assets into the box and you have the key. Then you designate someone else to have the key when you're gone. And so instead of waiting 9 months to 2 years, if you have a trust and you can provide the beneficiary, the successor trustee can provide the death certificate and proof that they are the next in line to receive the keys, that is how easy it is to then, just like that, as soon as the death certificate is provided, they have access to all of the assets. Even if you are not going to do a trust, these two documents are something you will want to have as part of your estate plan. And since we're talking about retirement and having the whole entire retirement plan working in harmony together, we want an advance directive for healthcare and a power of attorney for finances. We've heard horror stories of when, there's a loved one needs care and these documents aren't in place. You're looking at 4 months and $15,000 to get a conservatorship started while a loved one is going through these trials. So we have to ask ourselves, when it comes to estate planning, what if a spouse dies first? Do we divide it equally among the kids? What about the grandkids? What about the relatives? Do you have a child that you don't feel is ready to receive an inheritance? These are hard questions. And that's why people put them off. But it is good to tackle these problems when we do a retirement plan together so that you can not have anything derail your retirement plan. So we talked about a lot of things tonight. The inflation, national debt, sequence of returns risk, Social Security, but we've also talked about how to maximize our returns, keep your return high and your standard deviation low. What does a fiduciary actually do? Yes, he or she is legally obligated to act in your best interest, but a good one will build you a written retirement plan that coordinates all the moving pieces of your retirement together. They mitigate risk, not just solely focused on returns. We help you pay less tax over your lifetime, keep you from making emotional mistakes, and stay with you for the whole journey. So that is a fiduciary's job in a nutshell. And for those here tonight, we do offer a Retire Ready strategy session where we take your numbers and your goals and plug them into these same softwares and run Social Security analysis, longevity tests, standard deviation checkup, and a written summary to take home. Typically, this works when you have a $250,000 or more nest egg. We're not saying that we won't run your numbers if you have less than that, but it's just something that we've noticed that when we, run these numbers, these ideas can kind of move the needle when the nest egg starts at 250 or higher. So that's just something for you to keep in mind. So if that sounds interesting to you, feel free to either scan the QR code or fill out this sheet in front of you, and you can hand it to Karen, Mike, Judy, Crystal in the back. And I want to thank you all for your time. And we have gone a little over time, so appreciate it. And if you have any questions, feel free to let any of us know. Thank you.